quick and dirty um, slicing routine. This is what I use generally when I slice, and it's the quickest, easiest way I've come up with. Hope it helps you guys out, and let's get into it. So first thing I do is go ahead and make sure my correct printer is highlighted or selected. My plate is the correct one. And then for PLA, I just keep it on the generic PLA settings. I use Bambu settings. We're definitely going to have videos in the future where you can go around, go in here and edit the presets for different filaments. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to stick with generic PLA. That's the best setting I've found. And then we're just going to do this with standard. So with these, as you can see here, I have some preset settings. That means it's set to my preferences, and I don't have to change it every time. I just go to the one that I want to use. And then you have the different settings that come with the slicer, everything from fine to extra draft. All that means is the level of details, extra fine being the highest level and draft being the lowest level. These are kind of a matter of preference on how you want to print your item. So go ahead and play with those and figure out what works best for you. Now in quality, strength, speed, and support and others, we're going to go over this a little bit here. So part of my, before I even put a model on the plate, part of my checklist is to check these things we're going over on the left hand side. So I don't mess with the layer height or anything of that nature. Occasionally I do. That will be another video. Now seams I keep aligned. This way your seam stays in one area and it doesn't create little imperfections throughout the model. I don't use the scarf joint seam. Precision, I let that stay the same. Ironing, I tend to set it on top surfaces. That's what works best for me. And I keep it at rectilinear. Concentric tends to leave circles on the top surface when it's ironing. So this is my preference. Go ahead and play with it and figure out what works for you. These I don't mess with. Now the purpose of ironing is to make the top of the model smooth when it's done printing. That way it looks a little nicer. Wall generator I keep normal. Advanced I keep whatever they have. I don't mess with that too much. Now strength, this is where I have played with it for the past few years, and this is what I've come up with. So for smaller items like figures, things of that nature, things that don't need a lot of structural support, don't have to be super strong, they're just kind of sitting on a wall or on a shelf. This is what I like to do. I like to do 7 wall loops, and then I go down, I keep these the same. I don't worry about those too much, except for the top shell thickness. I put that at about 3 to 5. We'll do 3 right now. Bottom shells, I do the same, about 3 to 5. Reason being that just gives it a little more stability on the top and bottom, and also your infill doesn't show through. And then internal infill pattern, I generally, this one I keep, or I put on concentric. And then, so for an item like this that won't need a lot of support, won't be getting banged around a lot, I'll keep my infill at 5%. Reason being, it uses a lot less material, and that this item will not need to have as much durability. It still feels good because you have the 7 layers, but you're saving on material. And then the sparse infill pattern I do at gyroid. Reason being, it does make it a little stronger internally, but it also creates less areas that your print head will drag on. So grid, anything line based, when it's going over that to do the next layer, it might drag and that might cause issues. It might even mess up your print head. So I like to keep it at gyroid. There are other options that work just as well as gyroid, but I just found gyroid to be the best for me. And then these next two I don't mess with at all. Neither do I mess with advanced, except for I do an infill combination. That way the program knows where it needs thick lines, where it needs thin lines, things of that nature. Kind of gives it a cleaner print. Same with this next one. And the last one, that ensures that the shell vertically is the same all throughout. It's not thinner in some spots, thicker in some spots. It keeps it kind of uniform. Those are all just kind of things I do to um, keep my quality up. And then speed, I don't really bother with that. Bambu does a pretty good job of getting this things dialed in. There are times where you have to play with it and dial it in a little bit more, but we'll have videos on that as well. We have a lot of videos planned. But for the purposes of this video, we're not going to get into that. So the next thing I do is supports. So supports are a little, it's kind of a two-part process in my process. So to begin with, I put the supports on tree, auto, tree slim. So the reason being, when I put the pieces on the plate and it's at auto, it won't let me put the pieces too close together for the supports. It'll help out later. I'll explain that in a moment. The angle I keep at about 30 degrees. That just seems to be what works for me. I use slim because those supports do tend to start wider at the bottom, come up to a point. Makes them a little easier to pull off. And then I tell it on build plate oil only. That is basically, it's only gonna do certain overhangs that hang out into the build plate. This way you save a little bit on material. I leave the next one blank. I do tell it to remove small overhangs. It seems to come have a better details. The next raft I don't mess with. Filament for supports. That's when you're using support filament. We're not doing that at the moment. And then advanced, the only thing I really worry about is hollow. This way the supports print hollow and you're not wasting material. And the next big thing is the top and bottom Z distance here. So the standard recommendation is half your nozzle. That's what should be here. I go a little higher. So in other words, the recommendation would be 0.2 because that's half of 0.4 on your nozzle. But I do 0.3 because I've gotten away with it. I've never had any issues, and it makes the supports come off a little easier. The rest of these things I don't really bother with. I just keep them as is. So we're going to go ahead and get into doing a model. Let me put my card in. So the first step to putting a model in is going to go ahead and figure out what model you want. Right now we got this Blue Dragon set up, so that's what we're going to do. And what I like to do is highlight all the parts for the model and then open them at once. This way they're all on the plate and you don't have to keep going back and forth. So you see how this has all the models, and initially it's all highlighted, so when you move it, you'll move them all at the same time. So what you have to do is just click in a blank area. It'll allow you to separate it. And what I like to do is put my parts on multiple plates. So we'll go ahead and add another plate, grab these parts, put it on the plate. What I like to do is I'll fill each plate with this auto on, and that way it kind of predetermines it for you. That way you don't have any problems when you go to slice with supports hitting each other or a piece hitting each other. And what I like to do is fill up the plates best way I can, and then I'll go ahead and I hit arrange. And that'll arrange the pieces in the best way that the program sees for slicing. Then I go to the next plate and I hit arrange. Same thing happens. It puts it in the best position for slicing. And when it's on auto, it keeps in mind where it will put supports, and it'll arrange the pieces so that the supports don't run into each other or pieces don't run into each other. It's really handy for like parts where you have tons of pieces. Takes a little bit of the guesswork out. So once I have my plates set up the way I like, I do the arrange and get them positioned the way I want. What I'll do is go over here and change this to manual, because now we're going to paint our own supports on. The reason I paint the supports on is to I dictate where the supports go, because the program tends to put more supports than needed. So this way I can put enough supports to support the model, but not too many as to where I'm just wasting material. So once you put it on manual and have on build plate only highlighted, I go over and I click on the part that I want to put the supports on. Then I come up to here, supports painting, click on that. And then once you're in here, if you click on any blank area and hold down the left mouse button, you can go ahead and rotate it however you need it so you can see the piece. And then if you want to move it left, down, up, right, you click the right button anywhere on the blank screen, hold it, and move left, down, up, right. So once I'm ready to put my supports, I click on overhangs only. Then I jump down to here and I put that at about a 50%. 50, 51, somewhere thereabouts. So now you see all this orange pop up. That's where the program's recommending supports. So then what I do is I click on the pen tool and I bring that as large as I can. And then I go ahead and hit the left mouse button, hold it down as I'm painting these orange areas purple. What that's doing is telling the program that I want supports in these areas. In this program, or this area of the program, the painting, when you hold down the left mouse button and highlight things, that will make it purple. Purple means there will be supports. And if you hold down the right mouse button as you're highlighting things, that will turn them orange. And orange means no supports. So left, purple, you're adding supports. Right, orange, you're taking away supports. So I just go and highlight all these orange areas to tell it I want supports there. This highlight on overhangs only and highlight overhang areas can always be adjusted to your preference, but I found 50 to 55 is usually a good number. Gives me a good amount of supports, but not too many. And you have to have the overhangs on only to do that. Now, you can paint without overhangs and just kind of put it wherever you want. That's all a matter of preference, and it'll change from job to job. And there are other tools. Um, it all depends what you're doing. Uh, Go ahead and play around with them and figure out when you need them, why you would need them, things of that nature. And so now we have the supports painted. What I would do is you click on any one of those, it brings you back out here. And then you want to go to your next plate, hit the paint supports button, and do the same thing. Highlight overhang areas around 50 to 55. Overhangs only should be highlighted, and then go ahead and just highlight the areas you want your supports at. And then go back. Okay, so now these plates are ready for slicing. So you go ahead, when you're ready to slice, go ahead and click on the plate you want to slice and hit slice plate. And let it do its thing. It's going to take a minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video while it's slicing, and then I'll be right back. Okay, as you can see, we have both of these items sliced. Both of the plates, I should say. So, as you can see, let's get this out of the way. As you can see, it's put the supports right where I painted them. Like I said, this kind of cuts down on the use of filament. Put supports only where you need them, where you told them you need them, and you're not encasing it in supports. Makes it easier to take off. Also uses less material. And we'll go ahead and take a look at the second plate. Go ahead, get that out of the way. And same thing here. It just puts supports where I told it to. And one thing to keep in mind, as long as your angles, like these angle out, aren't at a 45 or really sharp angle, you can usually get away with printing them. This one might be a little questionable. So what I would do in that case, if I have any question, because it's hanging out a bit far, I go back to prepare, click on it, go back to your paint, because it'll save what you already painted, and say you want to put some more supports here. Just go ahead and put them where you feel they would be beneficial. So on this one, I would just kind of give it a little more support. And say you mess up, and you don't want to get rid of all your painting, because when you hit erase painting, that will get rid of everything. Let's show that. There you go. All the painting you put is done. So go ahead and put supports back along the bottom. And this is where some of the tools will come in handy. You know, fill. We'll fill a big area. I don't want that to have supports. Go ahead and right click to make it orange, and there will be no supports wherever orange is. And say, like I said, these are just hanging out too much. Go ahead and use your different tools to add more supports. and then you got your gap fill. Go ahead and hit that, and it fills in any areas where you may have um, left a little circle in just a section or missed a little spot. That'll go ahead and fill that for you. So let's go back to where we were slicing. And that once you do any edits on a plate, you would have to reslice again. But this is already sliced, so we're going to go into there, go to preview, and it automatically starts slicing the other plate. Let's go ahead and stop that. And that's another thing. You can always stop the slicing. Say you wanted it on manual and it was on auto and you need to stop the slicing. Go ahead and stop it and then go back to prepare, do your edits, and then come back to slice it once more, and then you can come back to preview to check out your newly sliced models. Okay, and this computer is being a little slow tonight. So I already showed how the supports come up, only where you put them. So all these little things, those are just, it tells you how much time every operation takes while it's printing, like your walls, your overhangs, how long that takes to print, how much filament it uses. I don't really pay much attention to that unless I really want to start diagnosing things. We can get a little more in depth on other videos on that, but it's not necessary at the moment. This is just a down and dirty. So the first thing I would look at is total filament. That tells you how many grams of filament total this model will use. That includes supports and the model. And as you can see, it breaks it down. Takes away the model filament. So you minus this from the total and you'll see how much you use in supports. That's kind of helpful when you're on a production basis. It helps you figure out how much you're using in supports, how much to charge for material, things of that nature. And we will have videos on how I do my pricing, things of that nature, all in due time. And then I go ahead and look at the model printing time. Prepare time is just the time it takes for the machine to do its diagnostics, level out, things of that nature. And then I go down to model printing time. That's how much time it takes for the model to print. So this model takes 12 hours, 55 minutes. And then down here is the total time combined with prepare and model printing time. So this is how much time your printer is going to be tied up on this particular model. It's helpful to know that type of thing when you're trying to figure out how much time your printer is going to be down for whatever reason it may be. So those are the things I look at once slicing. So once it's sliced and I'm ready to put this to print, I do it off the SD card. I put it onto the SD card and print off the SD card with the printer. So we're going to go over that first. What you would do is go to File, Export, Export G-code. Then over here in File Explorer, you should have an SD card in, which we'll do right now. There we go. Okay, and then you click on your SD card, you name it to whatever you want. and hit save. And then you open up File Explorer. Open up File Explorer and look at your SD card, and you will see Dragon. So we'll do that once again. You go to File, Export G-Code, click where your SD card is, name it, save. And if you already have that name in there, obviously it's going to ask you to confirm. And then you go ahead and look in your drive where your SD is and make sure that's in there. Now that is ready to put into the printer and tell it to print. So that's the way I do it off the SD card. Now, if you have a Bambu printer and it's hooked up to your network, you can go print plate. And then review all this, make sure it's all how you want it to be. Go to the name of your printer and tell it send. I don't have mine hooked up to the network just for personal preference, but those are the two ways to get it to print to your printer. We will have videos that get a little more in depth on things, but I just wanted to put out a quick basic slicing video. But we do appreciate you guys tuning in, and go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Also hit the notification bell so that you can get notified whenever we put up new videos. We're going to be putting up a ton of videos. This is going to be an ongoing thing. Hope it's entertaining and informative for you guys. And once again, thank you for tuning in. Let's go build something.